Good afternoon. We are live and I'm Mary Grace. It is Monday, the 13th of December, 2021. I hope that everybody's having a good day. Looks like people are coming in. So, welcome to the show. And as you're coming in, please do me a favor, say hello, click the like button on the channel, go ahead and follow the channel, subscribe, share, and then make sure you like the show. We are live today on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, also known as Periscope, and on CloudHub channel 111. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe over there. And then also, I do have a Rumble channel that is Mary Grace Media. Pretty much everywhere you can find me is Mary Grace Media, except on Twitter, which is Real Mary Grace 1. And then on CloudHub, follow my brand, which is Mary Grace Media, and then follow the channel 111. Those are two separate follows. Good to see everybody. Barley George says hello. He is out soaking up the sun and having a good time out there. He's we're getting like some disciplined things sorted out. I do have a funny little Barley George story. Barley George is the cat, for those of you who are new. And he lives here with me and my dad. So I can't really say that strictly that I'm a cat lady because he's like part my dad's cat. And so we're going on a trip for Christmas, and we're going to be staying at an Airbnb. And since Barley has been kind of going outside lately, much to my chagrin, my dad, I guess, has been thinking about that because when we go to the Airbnb, what's he going to do, right? And so we went to the pet store the other day to get his cat food, and we pulled up, and my dad goes, "You think we ought to get a leash for Barley?" And I was like, "Huh? What do you think?" So we're kind of in that experimental phase of thinking that he's going to have a harness and a leash. And I meant to mention this the other day, but I thought it was kind of adorable that my dad thought about that. And any advice you have for putting a harness on a wildcat and maybe walking him around a strange neighborhood, that would be welcome because he can't obviously go outside at the Airbnb. We're going to take his litter box, of course, but he definitely prefers to be outside. So that's the update on Barley George, and he's doing pretty well. He's definitely in the teenage years though, like toddler / teenager, because some of his behavior is, it's totally unexplainable. But I guess that's just the way it is. He's not the kind of cat that just lays around. I will tell you that. He's not passive. If he were a dog, he would be a border collie. That's how demanding he is as an animal. Does anybody else have a cat like that? Anyway, I don't see any chat here, so I guess nobody wants to hear about Barley, or the chat is stuck. Okay, good to see everybody. Before I go on, couple things I wanted to go over. Last week, I did a broadcast with Rachel Ham. I did an interview with her. She's in Texas. She's in California. She's running for Secretary of State of California. And it was a great interview. And I recorded it, and then I did a live stream of it on Friday. Now, for some reason, the live stream went up at 6 p.m. Eastern on a Friday night. It wasn't really my choice of time. I was trying to schedule it for a different time. But I was talking to Michelle, and she said, I guess somebody needed to hear it at that time. And so maybe they did. Hopefully the person that needed to hear it heard it. But the rest of you, I don't even know if you know that it's up. But if you go to my Facebook, my YouTube, all of my channels, you will see the interview that I did with Rachel Ham. And I recommend highly that you watch it. It was a very good interview. I've gotten great feedback from it, and she's an amazing person. She's an author. She is a teacher. She's a prophetic Bible teacher and a mom. She's raised 4 sons in California. That's not easy to do. And she is just an amazing woman of God, and she's running for Secretary of State in corrupt California. So she could definitely use your prayers, but please go and listen to that interview. And then if you do, just leave a comment so that we know you were there, and then share it, because I think it'll be very encouraging for a lot of people. Um, and if you're having problems with the feed, it looks fine on my end. You may need to reinstall your app or something like that. If you're watching on YouTube or another app, just check that out. Okay, so another thing I wanted to give an update on is I told you last week that I have a relative in North Carolina who's being billed for alleged overpayment of unemployment money in the state of North Carolina. And I say alleged because there's no wrongdoing on the part of my relative, but the state of North Carolina has already made a determination that my relative is on the hook and owes this money. And it just happens to be exactly the amount of money that my relative was paid in unemployment during the, I think, 5.5 weeks that they were out of work, that their business was closed by order of the government. Does everybody remember that? And so this relative obviously is kind of in a panic because they are being told that if they don't pay the bill monthly or all at once, it's going to be garnished from their wages, or that it will be taken from their tax refund if they're not, getting a regular paycheck. This is the situation, and I'm highly disturbed by this. I don't know about the rest of you guys. We're still in the process. I'm going to be helping them, but I wanted to put this out there. If anybody is, two things. If you're in North Carolina and this happened to you, I want to hear from you. Send me an email, info@marygracemedia.com. And if you are in North Carolina and you know about this, if you are aware of this, if you work inside of any of the institutions like the North Carolina Unemployment Office, it's called NES. If you work there, if you're a whistleblower, don't contact me directly. You should probably contact Project Veritas. Does anybody have their email address? Because they have a Proton Mail account. But what I'm saying to you is that I think that something fishy is going on in the state of North Carolina. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening in other states, because it turns out, based on the research that we did, just the cursory Google search on this, it turns out that there are TV and radio stations that have done stories on this going back into the beginning of 2021. And what we're finding is that there are many, many people in North Carolina who have gotten these letters and who are being told that they owe all of this back pay from money that the North Carolina Unemployment Office overpaid them. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of people were legitimately out of work, and they are now being told that they owe all of this money back. So in many cases, they were, they were out of work for like 20 weeks or more because they had kids who weren't in school and they had to stay home, or they had an elderly relative that they were caring for. There were all kinds of reasons. Some places just didn't open. And so people were getting unemployment. And this is a situation that I think it warrants investigation, because what's going to happen, and what we've seen happen, this is what happens with the IRS too, when they come after people, is that they're coming after people knowing that a huge portion of the people will not fight. They will just give in, because it's very scary when the government comes after you and says, you owe us money, and if you don't start paying it of your own volition, we are going to we're going to garnish your wages. They're treating you like a criminal. They're treating you like, a parent, like a deadbeat parent that's not paying child support, or a deadbeat divorcee that's not paying alimony. They are, and the problem with this is that the person who is, in this case, my relative, they are being forced to pay without due process. in a situation like, child support, at least there's been a court case. In this situation, there's no due process. This relative has gotten this letter of determination along with a bill saying, you owe this money and here's how much you have to pay. And if you don't, we're garnishing your wages. They're not even given the right to face their accuser. They're not given due process. And last time I heard, if you're charged with a crime, the state actually has to provide you with an attorney. Am I wrong about that? Are there any attorneys listening to me that can correct me or steer me on this? Because this is just a crazy situation. And I really am concerned about the people that are being forced into this situation without due process. And I would say that's most of them. And most of them are not in a position to contact a lawyer. It would cost them more in legal fees than what they owe the state. And so the state knows this. The people that are behind this, I believe they know what's going on. It looks like a massive grift to me. And I think somebody needs to take a look. So please contact me if you're in North Carolina and you have experienced this, because I'm not going to let this go, especially not when they're coming after somebody in my family. They crossed a line. And so it's just, yeah, they're not going to get away with it. So I did want to give you an update on that and put out the petition for anybody that knows about this. So Deborah on YouTube is making a clarification. She said, I thought President Trump said that government help for the pandemic did not have to be paid back. Exactly, Deborah. That's what I'm talking about. This was unemployment money. Most of it was federal money. It was PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And this is money that was paid out on top of what the states would normally pay out in an unemployment situation. They also relaxed a lot of the rules for qualifying for unemployment. And so the fact that the government is coming after this money is highly disturbing because somebody has made a determination that my family member and many, many, many other people in North Carolina were overpaid. And in fact, it could be a clerical error. It could be that the people who applied for unemployment, because they had never had done it before, maybe they did make an error, but that didn't mean that they were overpaid. I believe that somebody in a position of power in North Carolina has made a decision to go after these people and pull back all this money for the state. That's what I think is happening. I think there's corruption happening, and they are counting on the fact that that the average citizen who is just trying to make a living, who's just going to work, raising their family, going to school, whatever, is not going to have the will or the means to fight it. That's what I think is happening here. And it's exactly the same thing that happens with the IRS, right? Remember during the Hussein years when they were targeting conservatives? I had a client at the time who was targeted 3 times. Her business was audited 3 times during the Hussein years because of their politics. And that is what I think is happening. Has anybody reached out to the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina? Isn't he a good guy? I think he is. I think that we have to start at the local level. I did call the Attorney General's office in North Carolina. It turns out the Attorney General would actually be representing the state in this case. And so I may actually have dealings with the Attorney General sooner rather than later, because I believe that there is a case that has to be brought before the courts and that this has to be investigated. And so I think that we'll have to call the delegates, the local, what do you call it? Like at the state level, but then also the U.S. attorney for that part of the country. Again, because this is not something I'm going to let go. This makes me angry. If it were just a clerical error and my relative had a chance to make it right, to write to them and appeal, apparently there was a window for appeal, but there's no indication on the letter of when that is. And my relative got a bill in the meantime, which indicates that they missed their appeal window, even though it wasn't clearly indicated. So this is a big problem. And again, they're counting on people just paying it. And because they want to stay out of trouble. Of course, they don't want it to go on their credit score, right? They don't want to get a black mark because they didn't pay for it. And God forbid you would have your wages garnished. So either way, they're on the hook for it. They're just most people are just going to comply. Okay. Looks like some people came in on YouTube. Hey there, Jim. Good to see you. Millie, and we've got Christy. So, and lots of other people on, but I just wanted to give a shout out to you guys. Okay, so that's the situation in North Carolina. Again, if you know anybody in North Carolina, ask them if they got pandemic unemployment, ask them if this happened, and please have them reach out to me if it did. info@marygracemedia.com. I want to know what's going on there. Something is fishy. I smell a rat in North Carolina. Does it surprise anybody? No, it doesn't surprise anybody, does it? Now, I wanted to say something interesting. I want to talk about something interesting that happened last week. And this is something that I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of something to chew on, because I don't know if you guys know, in New York City last week, the Fox News Christmas tree caught on fire. Did anybody see that? Millie said, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner with the unemployment. It's actually been going on since the beginning of this year. Okay. Let me find this. I want to find this. Where the heck is that? It's supposed to be in my notes. Did I lose it? Well, maybe it's on here. Okay. Yeah, here it is. So that was, I think, on the 8th. So it was the 8th or 9th that the Christmas tree caught on fire. Does anybody remember that? Yeah. It was like breaking news on Fox News. And I just thought it was very interesting. And I was looking at it. It was like first thing in the morning that I saw this, and the Lord dropped something into my spirit. It was kind of interesting. Has anybody ever heard the term Foxfire? There was a whole series of books that was written about it. And I had heard the term before, but immediately when I saw that was the term that the Lord like popped into my head. And I thought it was interesting. So I knew I should look it up. And I went and looked it up. And this is very interesting. So does anybody know what Foxfire is? Does anybody know? You guys familiar with that term? So yeah, I don't watch Fox News. This came across my Telegram or somewhere on Twitter. It was like a news clip. Okay. I don't watch those shows, but I see clips. Just like, I mean, that's how I knew Chrissy Wallace had left Fox Sunday mornings and was going to over to CNN Plus. Chrissy Wallace, that little brat that did the debate and was so nasty to Trump, he's going to the CNN streaming service. How many people do you think are going to pay to watch him? Like, seriously? That's going to bring CNN out of the hole? Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. But let me talk about Foxfire. So this is what Foxfire is. Are you ready for this? Foxfire is actually it's a kind of like fungus that grows in the forest, and it grows on dead and decaying trees, and it looks like it's a bioluminescence. And interestingly, this is very interesting. It is the glowing portion of the foxfire. It's like the folk legend word for it is foxfire, but it's actually a bioluminescence that grows on dead and decaying trees in the forest. And so it looks like a fire from a distance. But the name for it, it says it is a chemical, the glowing part is a chemical property called bioluminescence. It is caused by a chemical reaction of an enzyme called luciferase. I'm not kidding. This is you can look this up. It is caused by a chemical reaction of an enzyme called luciferase, which produces light without the need of electricity. Furthermore, the glowing plants neither produce enough light nor glow for a long enough time to be of practical use. How's that for an indictment on an entire network? Isn't that interesting that their tree catches on fire right at Christmas time, and and God shows me instantly foxfire. Go look it up. And this is the definition of foxfire. I'm going to read this again. The glowing produces the glowing plants neither produce enough light nor glow for a long enough time to be of practical use. Yeah, isn't that interesting? And here's something else. It says, here's what the Lord showed me. So it looks like a fire, but it's not, in reference to foxfire. The tree is dead. And so the fire that you're seeing, it's void of any substance or meaning. Isn't that interesting? Don't you find that very interesting? I mean, it's not like a big long teaching or anything, but I love how God just shows you things like that. Like, wow, this sums up the entire fake news industry that we have become aware of. And I just think it's very interesting that at this time, when these networks are just imploding, that there is that the tree is set on fire, that it's literally on fire. This is the way God does things, right? He shows you these word pictures. And for those people who still doubt that God, will talk to people, that right there is an example of how God speaks to you. Now, he didn't give me a Bible verse. He showed me how to connect things. And so I had an impression of a word, and I looked up that word, and God used that word because I was open to listening. He used that word to show me that this is a bigger illustration of something that's been going on systemically for a very long time in that industry. Can you see the connection there? And hopefully that encourages somebody. If you're saying, well, I don't hear from God, you actually probably do. And a lot of times, depending on the way that you're wired, like I kind of hear things and I like words. And so he shows me often he shows me things through words and sometimes through pictures, right? I have friends who are more seers. Like Kat Kerr is a seer. She literally sees things in the spirit. God shows her. She sees the spiritual world. And so start to really think about that and ask God, ask him questions, ask him to show you, ask him to give you little hints and clues and things like that. And if you take the initiative and you start to follow those little trails, sometimes you get things like this, right? God will show you the bigger picture about what's happening. And that's what happened in this case. Isn't that cool? And so it really gets to the heart of what's happening, isn't it? And sometimes God will just do that as like a confirmation. Now, I mean, because I know that the fake news is rotten to the core. But it's almost like God uses that just to highlight. He's like, hey, the fox tree is on fire. I want you to go look up foxfire because this is not a coincidence, right? I'm shedding a light on the corruption and decay, and I want you to understand that I see it too, right? And so I was obedient to go and listen and look. And that's the other part of the prophetic. That's the other part of hearing God is just like in any conversation, you have to participate. Because if somebody, if you, have you ever had this happen where you're trying to talk to somebody and they just never hear what you say? They don't respond. Or if you're on the phone and you're talking to somebody and their phone goes dead and you realize you've been talking for 20 minutes and there's like nobody on the other end. That's how God, like when God is trying to talk to you and you're not paying attention and you're not responding, it's the same thing. It's like, well, you may not want to talk to them again if they're not even listening in the first place. And so the conversation that God wants to have with you it's an interactive conversation. He wants to know that you're actually responding and listening and participating. Does that make sense? And that I didn't know that I was going to use the Foxfire thing to teach, but he just reminded me again to talk about it. And so hopefully, you're getting the message about Foxfire, but also I think God wants really people to understand that this is a way that he talks to people. Okay. And hopefully that'll encourage somebody who's been trying to figure this out, because we've been using that conversation and language a lot. God talk to me, or God is, God is speaking to me. And then maybe you're thinking, well, he doesn't speak to me. I don't see how this is legit. And so I think that he's wants to show those of you who are still doubting. I think that's a perfect example. Okay. It's not a big thing. It's not like I'm, shouting from the rooftops, thus saith the Lord, Foxfire, right? It's not like that. It's just literally that word sprung into my head when I saw that the Fox Christmas tree was on fire. That's Holy Spirit going, hey, pay attention. And I'm going, oh, wait, I'm going to Google that. That's it. Okay. So I wanted to encourage you about that. And so the next thing I wanted to encourage you about, I've been talking about the book of Daniel, and this is a really interesting book of the Bible because it parallels a lot with what we're seeing right now in society, because it has to do with, being put in impossible situations and having courage. And I was thinking about this because, in this book of Daniel, let me back up a little bit to chapter 4. Daniel, in the beginning of this story, Daniel's friends are cast into the fiery furnace. And I talked about that last week. And they were in big trouble, right? I mean, they should have died because they didn't obey the king's edict. And so they were thrown into the fiery furnace. And speaking of which, right, it's like a foxfire. It literally had no substance. It was void of form and substance because, oh, wow, here's another word dropping into my spirit. So this is such a good analogy, because the fire that they were thrown into, it was like a foxfire. Because even though it had an impact on the evil people, it actually did not have any impact on God's people. There's something more coming out of that. I got to think about that. But wow. Got to write that down. Yeah, so let me go to this story. Okay, so Daniel's friends did not get burned in the fire because the fourth man was in the fire with them. That's what we believe to be Jesus, who was in the fire with them. And King Nebuchadnezzar actually saw that, and it moved him, right? And so he had a little bit of a conversion experience, but then he sort of, I guess, backslid. Okay. And so hold on a second. Let me just make sure I'm in the right place. Yeah. So after they were protected in the furnace, the king was like, that's amazing. Nobody should come against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? And so in the meantime, Daniel comes and interprets a vision for the king. And I'm not going to go into this. This is in chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. The king has a vision, basically, which says that he's going to go crazy and start like eating grass, and it all happens. But in the meantime, he promotes Daniel to a very high position, right? Well, then um, in chapter 5, hold on a second. Nebuchadnezzar he dies, and then Belshazzar, there's a new king who comes. Hold on a second. Let me just get my I lost my place here. Hold on. You talk amongst yourselves for just a minute. Talk amongst yourselves. Chapter 4. To be driven away from mankind. Okay, so then he gets so he serves a couple of different kings, and then along comes Darius. And in this particular situation, Daniel is in a very high position of authority in the kingdom, and there are people who hate him, like deep state people that are against him, and they actually convince Darius that he should. They convince Darius to build a statue to himself, and let me just read it to you, okay? So they came to the king and they said that he should build a statue that people should worship, and that if they didn't, they would be cast into the lion's den. And they already knew that Daniel worshiped his God 3 times a day. They already knew that, and so it was a setup. They were trying to get Daniel. That's what this was about. It's so funny. Like history never really changes at all, right? It's like it's just a different version of evil persecuting the believers. That's pretty much all it is. And so in this particular case, they make a new law that says you have to bow down to this statue of Darius, a man, and that if you don't, you will be thrown into the lion's den. And I think it's very interesting because, so Darius signed it, and so this is what Daniel does. So they already know that Daniel is worshiping God, his God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, they know that he's not worshiping their gods, but it's not really about that. It's about the jealousy and power. They want him out because the king favors him. The king likes him. And so they come against him, and they manipulate the king into making this edict. And I guess the king doesn't think, oh, that's going to affect Daniel, who I really like. And so what does Daniel do? This is really interesting what Daniel does. Now, because I want you to think about it in context of what's going on right now. So Daniel knows full well what they've done. He knows what they were going to do, and he knows what they did. And he doesn't get scared. So this is what he does. This is amazing. So think about this. So Daniel, this is chapter 6, verse 10. So when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered his house. Now in his roof chamber, he had windows open toward Jerusalem. And he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying, giving thanks before his God as he had been doing previously. Okay, so you're Daniel, and you already know that these snakes are setting up this rule, this law that will get you killed. And you know that it's being done specifically because of you, right? They don't care about anybody else. This is all done to trap Daniel and to get him killed. It's literally a death sentence. And so what do you do? All right, now think about this. I want you to think about it in context of what's been happening for the past 2 years, especially in our country. So you know the consequences of what's going to happen. Like Daniel's not going to get ridiculed. He's not going to lose his job. He's not going to be an outcast. He's not going to lose his friends. I mean, that's all going to happen because he's going to be dead. Like all those other things that people worry about, like he doesn't even have the luxury of caring about that because they're going to kill him. And he knows that. And so what does he do? I talked about this last week. I said, right now the pandemic has shown us that there are people who fall into a couple of categories, and it's pretty disheartening. Some people are just lazy, and some people are cowards. We know that, right? Well, look at Daniel. What is Daniel doing right here? He's not lazy, all right? He's going and praying to God 3 times a day, and he's definitely not a coward. Daniel, not only is he not a coward, he's like, okay. It says he knew that the document was signed. It's like, okay, Brandon just signed this decree saying that I have to do X or I'm going to lose my job. All right. And a lot of people got afraid when that happened. A lot of people got afraid back in March of 2020 when they started to realize that they were going to get ridiculed for leaving their house or for going into a store without the face diaper on. And they didn't want to feel uncomfortable. And so they complied. And now we have Daniel. Daniel's like the opposite. Daniel's like, bring it. He knows. He's like, now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered the house. And then it says, now in his roof chamber, he had windows open toward Jerusalem. And he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God as he had been doing previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and supplication before his God. Then they approached and spoke before the king about the king's injunction. Okay, so yeah, I mean, not only, what I think is important here is that Daniel does exactly what he was doing before, right? He didn't close his church. He didn't close his windows. He didn't go underground. He was like, really? You think I'm going to bow down to that statue? Are you kidding me right now? That's not the God I serve. And because he knew, he had so much confidence in God, he wasn't just going through the motions. He knew that he knew that he knew. He's like, yeah, whatever. I'm doing what I'm going to do because this is who I am. This is my identity. This is my heritage. This is my God. I'm not making a compromise here. There's no such thing as a compromise. And hey, you know what? And he knew this because his buddies already lived through the fire. He's going, yeah, I'm going to go and do what I was doing before. I'm going to worship God. And, I was thinking about this because I've been thinking like this past couple of years have really shown us who are the Daniels among us. And it is, it's like a very small percentage, especially when it comes to leadership. Think about this because, Daniel was the 3rd in power in the kingdom. And think about what we've seen. The people who are in positions of leadership, what have they done? What kind of leadership have we seen? It's been pretty disappointing, right? I mean, there's been a lot of disappointment. A lot of people have caved. We've really seen the character of a lot of people brought out. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost like, if you look at what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were put through the fire and they came out not smelling like smoke. And Daniel, their friend, if you think about this, sometimes there's a principle that happens in the faith, which is that you can actually take somebody else's receipts and bring it to God and say, you know what, I want this faith. I want this miracle in my life. This happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and I'm bringing this to you, God, and I'm saying, this is what you're capable of, and I'm believing you for that in my life. And I think that's what Daniel did. I think that Daniel, because he Daniel he watched his friends go through the fire. And and a lot of what happened there was that God was forging the character not only of his friends, but of Daniel himself, because he witnessed that miracle and he took hold of that miracle, and he received that faith for his own life. And it developed his character as well, because he walked with them through that experience as a friend. He didn't get thrown in the fire, but he saw the result and he saw what God did. And he took that situation and he grabbed a hold of the miracle that God did for them. And when it came time for Daniel to be put through a different kind of fire, the fire of this edict of being forced to make a choice, live or die. What happened? What choice did Daniel make? What was his character? And what did we see? We saw that he had the character, the strength of character to to walk into this situation with faith and to have integrity and not to back down. And that is amazing, isn't it? Because it's so God used the forging process of the fire that Daniel's friends went through, and Daniel was paying attention, and Daniel chose to take their faith and their miracle to help forge and develop his character. Isn't that amazing how that happened? And thanks to that situation, Daniel was able to walk into that situation with his head held up and never compromise, never to compromise. That is amazing. And I think that what's happening right now is that we're seeing firsthand those people, those individuals, the leaders especially, who have the character. God is showing us the Daniels among us. And he's using every situation around us to see it. He's using the literal fires like the ones that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through, but he's also showing us that, you know what, a lot of the fire that we're threatened with is actually just foxfire. It's void of form and substance. It literally has no heat, no smoke, no flame. It can't hurt you because the God who walks through the fire with you has authority and power and dominion over that. And for those people who walk with Jesus and who have Jesus in them and who walk in that same authority, they have the same power and the same authority over the fire. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing literally God is showing us those people and institutions that are foxfire, and he's showing us those people and institutions that have the character that is formed by walking through that and knowing that they know that they know that their God is the one who is walking with them. And so it renders the fire void of substance and form. And that is what is so powerful about what's happening right now. And so, I think that what I've noticed over the last few years is there are many people who are just kind of natural Daniels, right? They're going to stand up and they're going to resist and they're going to make a noise and they're going to fight visibly, no matter what, right? And then there are others who over the last several years have actually been sort of pulled kicking and screaming into being a Daniel. And, whereas 2 years ago, they would have chosen just to go along to get along. So much has happened and so much has been revealed over the last couple of years that they've actually shifted and they've in some cases they had to watch their friends go through hell, and it clicked something, it shifted something in them. And so now they're moving in the direction, they're like becoming Daniels. Whereas before they were maybe afraid. And then there are some of you who still haven't made that choice yet. And, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and they were saying, not everybody is a firebrand. Not everybody's going to stand up and make a fuss. There are some people that it's just too hard. And I thought about that, and it was interesting because part of me all this time has been sort of I think I've been a little judgy about those people. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have, because that's not me. Like, I'm just a fighter, and I know that I've lost friends because of my position politically, because of my position with some of with the edicts and the mandates, and, like, I'm not a compromiser. I'm never gonna just go along to get along, and it's a choice that I've made. It's just the way I'm wired, and I chose, like, I just can't not do that. And so I have found myself being a little judgy and thinking, like, people are afraid and they're wimps, and we wouldn't be in this situation if they, took more courage and were more Daniels. But it was brought to my attention, and I've really been thinking about this, that there are some people who just like they can't make themselves do that. It's not in them. It may be at some point, but it's too scary. It's too hard. They're not wired that way, and the cost is too much to them. This person said, we wouldn't have any friends if we stood up as much publicly and said what we really feel. And this person is part of a very, very progressive uh, social network. Okay, and so it's a different mindset about things, and not as much tolerance. And so I thought that was really interesting. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't see what's going on, but they're in a different. They're making different choices. Um, for a lot of different reasons, but it was educational for me, because I realized that in a lot of ways it is actually the Daniels who take the heat for a lot of other people. And maybe that's just the way it always has been and always will be, because, like, not everybody's a Daniel. And the stories are written about the Daniels, right? The stories are written about the Josephs, the Moseses, the ones that take the heat, the ones that, like, lose all their friends because they're standing up in the crowd and going, "This is wrong, don't comply," right? Those are the people that God brings forth to stand. And, but the thing is, like, the people that aren't doing that, God doesn't value them less. I guess that's one thing that I want to point out, right? Is that, it's God wants, he loves them all. He loves the ones that are afraid and that aren't wired like a Daniel. And, he doesn't want it's not his desire that any should perish. And so, if you are one of those people that's afraid, or that you're less um bold, right? You don't know if you could do what Daniel did. Um, is God calling you to courage? Absolutely. Is he calling you to do it exactly the way Daniel did? I'm not so sure. Now, does that mean, be lazy or be a coward? No, it means that you take action in the way that makes sense for you. So that could be that you're, like, going and being a poll watcher, where you're just standing there very quietly and not even talking, right? And you're taking notes and you're observing. There's all kinds of ways to fight without, like, standing on your roof and having the whole world see you. Do you see what I'm saying? So it was a revelation to me, and I hope that helps. I mean, God is amazing because he gives us all the authority and the power and the courage to have the experience that Daniel had. But at the same time, he also has made us unique in that there are people who are not going to not going to manifest that power and authority in the same way that we saw it with Daniel. I think that's the takeaway here. So kind of, it's just a kind of interesting way to view things. I don't know if I lost my chat here. I don't know if anybody's chatting on Facebook, but we'll see. Let me see. Oh no, now it's frozen. Okay. So anyway, that was what I wanted to share with you, just from what God showed me from the Word of God. Let me see if there's anything else in my notes that I have left out. Oh, character. I want to talk about character. So this is something you got to watch out for. Okay. I don't know if you guys realize, I want to switch gears here for a minute, but it actually is in line with what I was talking about with Daniel. So one of the things that's happening, that's happening, and you're going to see a lot more of this. And you saw this during 2020, and some of us who've been really like in the thick of things for a long time, we've seen it happening a lot. But this is something that I want people to be aware of, because a lot of people are kind of new. You're just coming into awareness about how things are working politically. And so I wanted to give you a heads up about something. There was an undercover video that came out last week from Project Veritas. And this was an undercover video of a GOP candidate, I believe in Arizona, who's running for Congress. And it's a young Black man. And his name is Alex Stovall. Yeah, he's an Arizona GOP congressional candidate, Alex Stovall. And he basically is he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's running as a conservative because he knows that people will have that people will support him, because he's a Black male conservative in a race that is in a climate, in a political climate that obviously like favors him, and he has wormed his way into being a candidate and getting on social media and getting support because of his color, and because he's a Black man and he's a conservative. But in reality, like he's a rhino. He's like a Dem. He's like a Dem in disguise. He hates the Republicans. He hates Candace Owens. Like he's criticizing the other GOP, the other people in the GOP, and like his true colors are coming out. And he admits that he's basically a scammer. And I wanted to bring this to people's attention because he's incredibly well spoken. He's articulate. He is a I think he even like fakes the Christian angle pretty well. And I really want people to be on the lookout for this. And the book of James, the Bible says, if anyone lacks wisdom, he should ask for it, and God will give it to him liberally. And this is where you really need to ask for wisdom. It also says in Ephesians 2 that God will give you a spirit of wisdom and revelation. Is it Ephesians 1 or 2? And that is so important, because you really need to have discernment. You really need to have revelation. But you want God to reveal to you what's true about people. And, this is an example of where you can do your part, even if you're not out there making noise and being, a visible Daniel. You are making inroads if you start to research these candidates. It is important that you research these candidates and that you figure out like what exactly is it that they're doing. Look at their background, look at their social media, look at their FEC filings, and really do an educated dive. And, some of you are really good at that. some of you are really good at it, and others not so much, aren't really good at researching. So those of you who are good at researching and who are good at compiling and summarizing the research, that's a service that you can provide for other people. That is a very useful thing to help other people to understand what's going on. And somebody had the courage to film this guy undercover and to get the word out and to be a whistleblower and to show the world what it is that this particular guy is doing. And hopefully it's going to expose him enough that he'll be forced out of the race and that he won't win the primary. But that's just that's an example of something I wanted to show you so that you're aware of what is going on and don't let those people draw you in. So I wanted to just bring that to your attention and just make sure that you understand that. Okay. What else is on my list here? I'm going to look at your chat here for a minute. Let me see. Does anybody have any questions or comments that I haven't gotten to? I have a little bit of extra time today, and we're not running up onto any other shows that I know of. Yeah, somebody said that luciferase. Let me go back up to this comment on Facebook. I think they said that Clay Clark said that luciferase was patented by Bill Gates, and I had heard that too. And people said that it was in the shots and that Clay Clark was reporting that. I haven't seen the documentation of that, but I just mentioned, the luciferase that is what makes the phosphor, like the bioluminescence, glow. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not a biologist. I don't know the entire chemical molecular structure of that bioluminescence. I mean, I've seen it in the ocean all the time. I used to live on the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and I would go swimming at night because, like, when the wind was in a certain direction and the water was full of bioluminescence, and so you would run your fingers through the water, and it was like diamonds trailing off your hands. It's amazing, and I've seen it in Hawaii too. But so I don't know. I don't know how they could. I don't know how they could patent that. That's what I'm not sure about. I mean, if I don't know. I don't understand how, because I didn't think that you could patent things that are naturally occurring in nature, right? I don't know. And the word Lucifer is actually it's from the Latin, I think, for light. So luciferase, it's interesting. Okay, Scott wants to know, tell me more of the Supreme Court and the Texas decision regarding abortion. Pro-life received a victory, but the regular news is confusing. Scott, I looked at that the other day and I didn't take notes on it. I think that there was a small victory that occurred, but I think that the overall decision from the Supreme Court is not going to come out for several months, if not into the middle of the summer. The analysis that I saw on the oral arguments was that this is overall going to be a victory, that it will be a victory for the pro-life movement. That was just the analysis. Like, people are quick to say oral arguments don't always go the way that they don't always indicate the way a case is going to be decided. But the overall analysis that people were coming up with was they really think that they do think that this is going to be a win for the pro-abortion side. And so remember, what's at stake here isn't necessarily that the Supreme Court isn't being asked to come out and cancel or reverse Roe v. Wade. What they're being asked to do is to put that and one other case back to the states and to give the states their rightful authority to legislate in matters of abortion. And that's what they're doing. So in Texas, Texas has been more strict, has passed laws that are more strict for abortion than other states. And so they have, I think it's called the heartbeat bill, right? And so the whole point of this is that is that the pro-life side is asking that not only the states have the right to exercise authority in that area, but that at some point the decision may be put to the people, which means that it would go through Congress, that it would be signed into law nationwide, but that basically the Supreme Court never really had jurisdiction over this, and that it is a constitutional issue. And if you have enough people on the Supreme Court who are constitutionalists, who are originalists, then they would rule on the side of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everybody, not just a woman who is wanting to make a decision about just her body. And that is that's what's at stake here. So I don't think that we are going to. I don't think that we're going to know until for several months. So stay in prayer about this because I don't know if they actually made the decision yet, and if we're just waiting for the written expose, right, or the written version of the decision. So I don't know when it's going to be handed down. Okay, somebody else asked a question here. What is the latest on the vax mandate? It looks like it's losing steam, but the MSM is quiet. Yeah, of course they're quiet. So we're winning on that. Basically, the Senate last week voted to put an end to Brandon's national vaccine mandates. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out long term. Does that mean that all of it stops like now? I don't know. I do know that so far the federal courts have stopped the mandate at private businesses, and then also they put a stop to the Medicare mandate because up until last week, any facility that was being paid Medicare dollars was being forced. Medicare was withholding payments from facilities where their workers were not vaccinated. I mean, it's just the biggest money grab ever, right? I mean, you guys, hopefully people are getting this by now. I mean, are you hearing it from people, from normies? Like, are they starting to understand something might be up if we're on booster number 4 now? And I mean, the vaccine hasn't even been out, but like a year. Most people didn't even start getting it until January of this year. So we're looking at, 11 months in, and you're on number 4. I mean, that's a quarterly dose. Are we going to monthly subscriptions now? This is important. People have to be waking up here. And obviously it's not working. I mean, they're going to tell you, oh, you can still get it if you're vaccinated. I mean, they've flip-flopped so many times because they said point blank, if you get the vaccine, you can't get COVID. They told us that, right? We knew they were lying. So now that all these people are getting sick and that we have more deaths this year with vaccinated people being vaccinated, right? Those aren't all unvaccinated people. They've changed the definition of what it means to be vaccinated. Now you have to have all the shots to be fully vaccinated. right? So if you've had one and you get sick and you go in the hospital, you're called unvaxxed. And that's how they justify saying this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. I'm sorry, they've already had a shot. That's why they're in the hospital, right? And so now we're on number 4. We're on number 4 because number 1, 2, and 3 didn't work. In fact, they made people sicker. And guess why else? Because the people that are on to you have been on to you since beginning, since number 1. And they're not going to get number 2 and 3, which means that your bottom line is being affected. And so you have to put out another shot to get more money because you didn't get as much money off of shots 1, 2, and 3 as you thought because the public didn't buy in. That's what's going on right now. That's why there's a number 4. That's why they're pushing it on children. That's why they're pushing it on babies because they didn't make bank. I mean, don't get me wrong. The pharmaceutical companies are up billions of dollars, but they didn't get as much as they wanted. They haven't reached their financial goal yet. That is why you're seeing shot 2, shot 3, shot 4. That is why you're seeing you better make these people get it or lose their jobs. I mean, they've gone from like giving you lottery tickets to telling you that you can't buy groceries if you don't get this shot, that you can't go to work, that you can't feed your family, because they're so desperate to meet their quota. You know, doctors get a premium for giving you the vax. It's free, but the doctors are getting a bonus. You know that, right? That's why every time you walk into the hospital, and this is true with a lot of drugs, not just the COVID shot, flu shot, right? What's the first thing they ask you? Have you had your flu shot? Have you gotten your flu shot? Right? Have you gotten your vaccine? I mean, finally, like we just shut them down at the VA. I'm like, no, we're not doing it. Don't ask. But they get money. They get COVID money for doing this. And this is not a conspiracy. I'm not just making this up. They're getting extra money. That's the way the drug companies work. They get money and the doctors get money for pushing these drugs. And they get a bunch of money. And they get quotas. They get bonuses when they meet a quota, right? So, you know, there's a lot going on here. And the bottom line is we are winning. It's not coming as fast as we want it to. But, you know, at some point, my original question was like, are people waking up? Is number 4 waking them up? Is it going to take like monthly? When they get on the monthly subscription just to function, just to be able to go to work and feed their families, is that what it's going to take to wake them up? I don't know. But I think a lot of people are starting to, you know, to get it. You know, and hopefully, you know, they'll have the humility to be able to say, you know, I was wrong. Like I was completely taken in. And I've seen that happen. I've seen, I've seen people come around. I mean, I've talked to people who said, I took the first one. That's it. I'm not getting a booster. I took the first 2. That's it. I'm not getting a booster. But, you know, we'll see, you know, and, to me, it's obvious. To a lot of you, it's obvious what's going on. To some people, it's not, you know, but there are people who still believe that. I mean, they believe that when you turn on NPR or you open up the New York Times, that they're telling you the truth. They don't make the connection that every single commercial that comes on TV between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night is like a Pfizer commercial. It doesn't even dawn on them. Like your life is sponsored by Pfizer, and that everybody that's in the hospital, you know, that people that get in there and get put on a ventilator, that the hospital is getting COVID money for that. Like they have no idea, right? So, any other questions? Anybody else have any questions for me? Any comments? I've got a couple more minutes. I see Barley George making noise outside. Anybody else want anything? Any other questions? I did want to tell you guys that some of you have gotten the information from me about the CBD. Let me put up the link for that. For CBD, there are some Here we go. If you go to shopwithmarygrace.com, you'll get, just put in your email and then you'll get a little, you'll get an email back with a link. Okay. Shopwithmarygrace.com. That's the CBD tinctures are on sale right now. It's like a really good sale. Um, so check that out. I love the CBD. I love it. It's amazing. It's incredible. I've never had CBD like this. I tried some other CBD and it just like, it didn't really do anything, you know? And when I say do anything, I'm talking about like pain, inflammation, aches and pains, things like that. And it's wonderful. I love it. So shopwithmarygrace.com. I don't know how long this sale is going on, but just go check it out. And if you already got the link, you can use the link that I sent you before. Okay. Um, just check that out. And the promo code for that is Mary Grace. All right. So let me go back to my show notes for today. Anybody else have a question? Let me look at the chat here. Deborah, no, I did not say that I'm going anywhere. I'm going to be on this week. I'm going to be on Wednesday and Thursday. I'm going to be on Wednesday and Thursday at probably 1 p.m. Eastern. Is there THC? Marvin, yeah, there's different strengths, and some of it is full spectrum, and some of it is broad spectrum. So, like some, depending on where you are, our CBD actually does ship overseas. So you can go on the website and look and see, like some countries will allow the full spectrum, but I think everywhere that we ship gives you the broad spectrum, but not every place. And some states, I don't even think you can get the full spectrum. So it depends on your state. But if you go on if you go to shopwithmarygrace.com, you get the link, you go check it out, and you'll be able to see like where it actually ships. Okay. There is a stronger one available that is like really stronger, and that you have to become an affiliate to get access to that. I think it's like a legal thing, and it doesn't ship to every state. So, but anyway, it's really good. I really, really like this CBD. Anything else? Oh, superfoods. A lot of people are going to be doing a lifestyle transformation, a superfoods transformation, starting on January 1st of this year. A lot of people got on this last year. And it's, everybody's making New Year's resolutions. You want to undo the past couple of years of craziness. You want to lose some weight. You want to just shed some things. So we're doing a new you in 2022. And you can get a promo code from me. Go to info@marygracemedia.com so that you can save over $100 off of your 30-day supply. It's really cool. There's Zoom calls that you can take part with. There's some Facebook groups that you can get involved with so that you can have support during your transformation. It's a really good opportunity. And if you want to do that, go ahead and order now so that you can get your superfoods. It's info@marygracemedia.com. It does take a little while if you do the free shipping, just because it's like Christmas and it's the US mail. Okay. So info@marygracemedia.com. Send me an email so that you can get that promo code. All right. I will be back on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Apologies for being on late today, but Wednesday and Thursday of this week is going to be 1 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget, go back and watch the interview that I did with Rachel Ham on Friday. It was really, really good. I think you'll find it very encouraging. And also, like the channel, subscribe to my channel, share. And if you come back after the fact, please leave a comment and let me know that you are here. It helps other people see the show in their feed. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And thank you to all of my moderators. And thank you to Delia for taking notes. And thank you for everybody in the chat today. Everybody have a wonderful evening, and blessings to all of you. And I hope that you are enjoying this beautiful Advent season.